Anything else you do want me mentioning? Like anything that you're up to? I'm going to mention Wise Guys, of course.
No, just Deseret News, BYU TV, Wise Guys.
KSL. All right, I got you.
Used to be KSL, Vegas, Good Morning America. 30 years as a news anchor type, sport type.
Okay.
That's it.
All right, let's do this.
Former state champion of the Orem A's at 14. That's go ahead.
Okay. Are we recording? I think we've already started.
No, we can't. We can't start on that.
You got to make sure we start on that.
Can't start on me bragging
Ladies and
about
gentlemen,
something.
welcome to another podcast. Today, I have my good friend Dave McCann on with such an incredible background. This guy, so he and I became buddies. I think I talked about this. I can't remember if James is here to remind me. But I have made some dear friends through social media. There's power in social media. So you and I met on Twitter. I think didn't you and I meet on Twitter?
We may have met on Twitter, but we also met at Stadium of Fire.
Well, I remember that, but even before that, I think that we connected on Twitter because he was the host of the Stadium of Fire, and so Gigg's done a bunch of stuff with the Stadium of Fire in the past. But Dave McCann has a very rich history. 30 years in sports, commentating, analyst, reporter. And Dave has one of those voices, one of the greatest compliments I was ever given. I'll never forget this. I've been married to my wife for like a year, and we played like a board game with a bunch of, couples. And one of the girls said to me, she goes, you have a great voice. You have a voice that would really do well in radio and whatever. I was like, thank you. Thank you. But some people are just born. It's not the case, probably. I mean, I'd like to maybe think that I have a decent voice, but he has one of those legendary voices, right? The voice that carries and that just sounds great when it comes to sports reporting. You just got that voice, dude.
When I was in Vegas anchoring the sports, and I was moving over to the news, I made that transition, and in came a letter to the newsroom from a family that was too much for them. And the dad of this family had written to our station to say they would no longer be watching Channel 8 anymore because of me, because the fact that I moved from sports to news to where I'm on more often now, that was too much for them. And he said, quote, "The sound of Dave McCann's voice makes my ears bleed, period," close quote. And I read that and I thought, you know what? He thought about this one. This is good. For sure. So I've kept that one from years ago. Good. So when you say, it's not for everybody. We all have gifts and skills and things like that. And I took a class at BYU, a voice diction class from a fella who has passed away a while back. And you talk differently when this is in front of you. And especially in the evening news, because there's no uhs and but that's not how you talk normally. This is how we talk normally, and you peaks and highs and lows and this and that. And then you throw yourself into a football game, add 65,000 fans. You're either way up here because you're trying to talk over the people, or you're down here, let the people talk over you, and you kind of. That's where I think Jim Nantz is so good, such an influence on me of just. Not too high, not too low, and stays out of the way. Whereas Dick Vitale is in the way, but that's his stick. Super high, crazy, and enthusiastic. So there are a lot of varying styles, but I've appreciated Nantz, Pat Summerall before him, of hey, my job's to facilitate you watching this event, but the fans are the ones providing all the noise.
Right.
If you want to go to radio, then you're you're Greg Wrubell, you're all in.
Greg's great.
But for us, for Blaine Fowler and I on BYU TV for broadcast, it's we're in the middle because the other half of the audience is just as important to us. And so why would we want to tick them off? So we just try to stay in our lane, so to speak. And your voice goes along with that.
Right.
And you can tell in a second when you turn a game on who the announcer's cheering for.
For sure.
And if it's not for your team, it ticks you off.
For sure. Absolutely.
So we've always said, hey, look, let's just – and then it's worked. And when you spend most of your life with an IFB in your ear, and you know that with all the bands you work with, the crowd can be loud, but you can be right here because you can hear your voice. But if you can't hear your voice, then you naturally go up thinking that you've got to project.
Yeah.
When Keith Urban was here at Stadium of Fire a couple years ago, I sat backstage, and watch them for a few songs because I think he's the best. I just love him.
He's great.
First class to meet and visit, just great. But what was interesting to me was they're backstage playing. The speakers are in front of them. They have their IFBs in so they can, talk to each other, or the band director, whatever, can visit with them, and that allows them to sing and project because the amplifiers are taking their voice to the rest of the stadium.
Right.
So they're back there talking to each other but the fans out there are just hearing this blasting band. Right. And I just watched that. I was fascinated. I'm thinking that's incredible. How they can perform every night without losing their voice, because they're not screaming. They're singing like this.
That's right.
Whereas the fans hear it just.
That's right.
Anyway, everyone's voices can be trained.
So I have to finish a proper introduction for you, but I want to ask you one question because you mentioned a couple names for those that have called games and are the voice of sports.
Yeah.
Who is the greatest sports commentator of all? Who is the voice? When you think of the voice, who is it? Be careful how you answer. I'm really actually interested to hear this.
For like football or for all sports?
I'm talking about all.
Because I know you want me to say Vin Scully, but part of me would want to say Harry Carey, but I know Harry Carey wasn't. He was just to good. Us as Cub fans.
Yeah.
He didn't call a great game. He called a great game to Cub fans.
That's right. He was great though.
Brent Musburger had a big influence on me back when he was host of NFL Today, and he was doing some play-by-play.
Right.
And he came to Provo to do a BYU Air Force game, and Ken Stabler was his analyst. I was a runner. I was back from my mission. I was a sophomore, so cool. And so I had a job of just standing up there if they needed anything.
The early beginnings.
And I thought this was super important. And for BYU at the time, we had the Blue and White Network, and I was a sideline reporter.
Yep.
But this was a CBS game. And I remember two things. I was standing there, and the producer comes up and says, "Hey, will you take this packet down to the Provo Marriott and give it to Ken Stabler? Knock on his door and tell him he needs to be here at a certain time." I'm like, "Yes, sir." I run out, get my car, I drive down there, knock on the door, and the double doors open up. Here's Ken Stabler. His hair he just got out of the shower.
Disaster.
It's everywhere. He's wearing a towel, and he's like, in a southern drawl, it's like, "What do you need?" And I'm like, "Mr. Stabler, this is from such and such. You're supposed to be at the stadium at whatever time." He's like, "Thanks, man," and shuts the door. And I'm like, "Well, there's my one run-in with Ken Stabler."
It's Ken Stabler.
And so then I go back and we do the game. And I didn't do much other than just kind of stand there, which is what a runner does. After the game, Brent Musburger's leaving, and I'm like going, I got to say something.
For sure
I haven't pretended to be him for years.
Of course.
And I just said, "Brent, I'll see you in New York someday." And he said, "You do that, young man." And then he was out. And the next year, I was hired by Good Morning America as a reporter.
Were you the first reporter for them?
Yeah.
I thought I saw
first one they ever rolled the dice
awesome.
on. And during that same year, Musburger left CBS for ABC. Wow. And now suddenly we were in the same company in New York.
Did you go talk to him and say, "Remember me, the kid that said, I'll see you in New York"?
I never did say that to him.
You should have.
I should have. But it was just so crazy as to how life goes.
Cool.
And then that's kind of where things started for me. But yeah, it was the day of a runner looking right. And I was just like, I just thought he was so good at. I pretended to be him on my electric football set for years.
So did you always want to be into sports? Be an analyst, reporter? Is that always what you wanted to do?
My mom says when I was 4, I told her that's what I wanted to do, and I just never varied from it. I remember the first published article I had was in our 4th grade class newspaper. I wrote about BYU and Utah State. And somewhere I still have that. And then when I was 13, I got cut from the freshman basketball team at Orem High because I was short. All my friends were taller than me. They made the cut. And I was like, I got to find a way to – my career path to the Celtics took a giant, turn here. It wasn't going to happen for me. But I thought, well, I love being around sports. My brothers were athletes. My dad was executive director of the Cougar Club, so we were all in with BYU. And I thought, I can write. So I got a job with the Provo Herald, writing high school football and basketball stories.
Wow.
And so when I was still a paper boy of the Herald, I was delivering the paper with my articles in it.
I love
it's like, hey, there's a good story on C12.
I was a paper boy too, man.
Oh, yeah. You have to, right?
I wanted to have my $30. Doesn't even know what a paper is right here. He doesn't even know what a newspaper is.
Yeah, it's old school. But but that's where I found that, hey, you know what? I can be involved and get paid for it.
Right.
My friends are playing on the team, but they're not getting paid for it. And then it just went
so cool
that way into radio, and then after my mission, TV, and Good Morning America, and then Vegas, and then Salt Lake, and BYU TV, kind of through all of it. And so that's all I tell my wife, look, I can't fix anything. But I can call people that can fix stuff.
That's right.
She didn't marry a handyman, but This is what I do. This is what I can do.
That's so good, man.
And you have your set of skills. You do things people can't do. And it's why people come to you for your service, which is awesome.
Well, I appreciate that. And you're one of the best, man. And I still think that you have some really, really cool things in your future. So I mean, there's Good Morning America. I didn't know that you were at UNLV for 8 years. Is that correct?
I was their play-by-play guy for 10 years while we were in the mountain up here. Because remember when BYU went into the mountain owned everything.
That's right.
So we had a couple of games, during Jimmermania, a couple of preseason games. And then when league started, we were out. And so I called UNLV for 10 years. John Robinson was the coach for a good handful of them. He and I became I spent more time with John Robinson than anybody in Vegas.
That's great.
You're sitting down, and he just is football. It's like, all right, let's talk about Marcus Allen. Let's talk about, Charlie White. Let's talk about O.J. Simpson. Let's talk about Keyshawn.
Right.
I just thought how lucky I was. The team was, UNLV sucked. I mean, a good year was 5-7.
They were so bad.
But to be around John Robinson,
stud.
So here's a funny story. BYU's playing UNLV up here.
Right.
I'm the play-by-play voice for UNLV. My dad's head of the Cougar Club.
Right.
He has me speak to the Cougar Club before the game. So I leave our pregame stuff, come down. I'm wearing a red UNLV thing, and I announced to the Cougar Club there's a difference between scarlet and crimson. Scarlet's okay to wear, where crimson is not.
Of course.
And I think everyone bought into that. But the day before, I'm up with John Robinson. The visiting team stay at the Marriott downtown because it's big enough to hold everybody. And I went up to interview him for our pregame show. So it was the day of, and I go into this room, and his wife didn't come on the trip. It was just him with his. I mean, there's this giant fruit platter, and I'm just like, you don't even eat fruit, but there's this giant fruit platter. He goes, hey, sit down, and he goes, I don't want to talk about football. Let's talk about something else. We'll tape that in a minute. And so we started talking about life, and he goes, you know what? He goes, you see over there? Pointed over toward the stadium. He goes, there's an elementary school behind the stadium. That's where I went to elementary school. I go, what? He goes, you went to Rock Canyon Elementary School? And he goes, I did. My dad was the one who helped build Geneva Steel.
No.
And while he was building that,
no way,
he was attending Rock Canyon Elementary School.
No way.
John Robinson.
Who would have known?
And I'm just like, you got to be kidding me. You can see that school from the football stadium. Just the small world of, and he'd never been back to coach, had never coached in Provo.
Wow.
And so you just learn fascinating things.
Yeah,
but
you never know.
Time with him was priceless.
That is so cool. So UNLV, then you KSL, Deseret News, going through all these.
So when I was UNLV's guy, I was a sports anchor at KLAS in Vegas.
Okay.
So that's what brought me to Vegas to work at the CBS affiliate there. Did weekends and then weeknights for sports, and then moved over to news. Remember when the sound of my voice made that guy's ears bleed? That was during the transition from sports to news. I never did hear from him either. I don't even know if he made it. They might have listened. It might have been too much. They might have passed away just listening to our newscast. But it was going to be really hard for him.
You made him bleed, man.
I know. You should never do that.
Yeah, seriously. So nowadays, you're still calling games, basketball, football, right? And you and Blaine are doing the Wise Guys, which I was fortunate enough to join you guys.
Yeah, we went next level when we had you come in as a guest.
That was fun. That was a good time.
You know, the beauty of the Wise Guys show is it's like this. You know, we have a few things we want to talk about, but really we're going to talk about you and what you're up to.
Yeah.
And I had Jordan Leslie on last night's show, and I'd written a story about him in the Deseret News earlier this week, and here's a fascinating guy. He was the grad transfer at BYU before grad transfers were cool. Now BYU's got like a whole bunch of them.
Right.
And so the world's changed.
Right.
But back in 2014, he comes from UTEP, and he's a fascinating story.
Yeah.
And he told me one thing that I'd written about. So he's at UTEP. You remember the night Taysom beat Texas by himself up here?
Yeah,
at that big storm in 2013. Yeah, we were all there. It was insane.
Dude.
Yeah. Well, I asked Jordan, I said, well, where were you? Did you watch that game? Because he's a college athlete at the time. He goes, no, we were at the Sun Bowl. They were playing New Mexico at the same time. Getting killed by New Mexico. A guy ran for like as many yards as Taysom ran against Texas. He goes, but I went home. I was bummed out. Went home, turned on ESPN, and watched the highlights of Taysom running up and down the field. He goes, I felt it was awesome. And he had no affiliation with BYU whatsoever. He just hated Texas because Texas had recruited him but didn't offer him. And so that was his dream school. He's from Houston. His dream school. So here's a guy who's watching highlights of Our Finest Hour.
Yeah.
With nothing to do with Our Finest Hour. He's just glad it's Texas's worst hour because he can't stand Texas.
Truly.
So then, end of the year, he gets his electrical engineering degree. Guy Holliday's up here who coached him at UTEP. Guy Holliday brings him up here as a transfer, has a great season, goes to Texas in Austin, leading receiver in the night, has the great Circus Lynn Swan catch to set up a touchdown.
Oh, yeah.
And they beat him 41-7. And you just sit there and go, flashback 364 days. He's walking home from the Sun Bowl all bummed out that they got beat by New Mexico in overtime. And he's going to turn on Sports Center and look at Texas getting mopped up. And then his life takes a giant turn.
It's crazy, man.
That's the beauty of sports.
For sure.
And we got to be kind of part of that, which is awesome.
For sure, man. For sure. And you guys have done an awesome job. The show is great, by the way. If you haven't had a chance to take a look or listen, especially BYU fans, it's great stuff. And I have no doubt it's just going to continue to do this. And I'm sure it is. Numbers as far as listeners and so on. It's great. You guys have done an awesome job.
Thank you. We wanted to start it 16 months before the Big 12.
Right.
So that when September comes, we're full speed. We're not trying it out. We're doing it. And so that's been a big thing for us. The reason we started it is we travel with the team, and people line up and want to talk to us.
Yeah.
But we don't have time to do that.
They want the
inside. On the road. And it's not because we're great. It's we're connected to what they love, which is in the locker room still waiting to come out. And we thought, hey, you know what? With today's technology, let's pick a night, flip a switch, start a live stream where fans can just ask us questions. And then we said, all right, well, we started that. Why don't we bring in some guests? And so then we started bringing in high rollers like you, like Marie Osmond, Danny Ainge, Jimmer Fredette, Max Hall. You just go down the list. It's a who's who of anyone connected with BYU.
Yeah, of course.
Doesn't have to
have
played. Doesn't even have to be a sports person.
For sure.
And we know what our target audience is, 500,000 BYU alumni.
Wow.
And
it's not just 500. I mean, I'm not a BYU alumni.
Right.
Yeah.
But folks who are connected to it.
Yeah.
But there's 500,000 BYU alumni that are connected to it, and their kids and their friends and their neighbors. And now we're in the Big 12, and all the boats have gone up.
It's about to get real, man.
Yeah. So we're really excited about it.
I am so excited about the Big 12. I've been waiting for this day for years. And bad on you, Pac-10 at the time. Pac-12, you missed out. I just wanted to say that with you here. Like, those suckers. Let's not get into that. We'll leave it there.
They're in some big trouble.
They're in some serious trouble, and they deserve every bit of it. Every single bit of it.
But you know what? I would say this. The Big 12 is such a better fit for BYU than the Pac-12 ever would be, could be, or has been.
Truly.
Just with the presidents, the church, the ideologies.
Yeah.
And I was on a mission in Texas. We're the greatest people in the world.
Texans are another breed for the good side of life. Incredible people. I love Texas. I love everyone from Texas. Everyone I meet from Texas has manners. They actually care to listen. They're hard workers. I mean, I could go on for days. And
they're not all Cowboys fans, even though that's the stereotype.
Yeah. I don't know why this came to my mind. This is my shout out to Clayton Kershaw. Some of the stuff that just came out. He's from Texas.
Yeah.
Dallas. I think Arlington. I'm not really sure, but some of the recent stuff that happened with the Dodger organization, which I'm sure that you're aware of.
Yeah.
I was really, really impressed by Clayton sharing his true thoughts on the whole situation with the one group that the Dodgers wanted to honor and bring in and so on. We won't dive heavy into that, but that's Texas for you. That they don't beat around the bush. They say it how it is, and I don't know, man. I just love Texas. I love everyone from Texas.
They're awesome.
They're good people.
They're awesome. There's so many good people around the world, and one of the great things about a mission is it sends you into the world. You're still young and don't know anything and all that stuff, clueless. But you see, I had this turning point in my life on my mission. Growing up in Utah and in our bubble, cultural bubble, so to speak. It's easy to start thinking like, okay, there's a lot of good people in the world. They would be even greater if they were members of the church. And you start thinking that way. To meet somebody going, oh, the guy's so good. He would be so much better if he was a member of the church. And I remember catching myself thinking that way out there, and I flipped it, and I said, oh, wait a second. That guy is so good. I would be a much better member of my church if I was more like him.
Such a great way of thinking.
And then it just clicked. It's like there are better people outside of the church than in the church because there's so many more people.
There's so many good people out there. So many good people.
But we don't. Yeah, when we meet folks, it's not about, hey, how can I just package you into what I know is goodness, and then you'll really love it. Whereas at face value, it's like, you know what, true. You're good and I'm good. We're both trying to make the world better. More power to you.
Let's keep going.
Yeah.
That's such a great point. So I have a number of questions that I'm going to fire out at you. And then we have a little game we're going to play here in a bit. But what's your favorite sport to call? Like what do you enjoy most?
Football.
Football.
And the reason why is it's an event. It's an event in people's life. They look forward to it all week long. They talk about it. They read about it. It's Saturday afternoon or Saturday night, whenever, or Friday night or Thursday night, however the game shakes out. And it's just the one game. It's the one game a week. Basketball, sometimes there's 3 games a week. So hey, you're high on a big win Monday. You're as low as can be on Thursday because you lost. You can go through a roller coaster. But football, you have 12 weeks, sometimes 13, to get it right. And to our fan base, Cougar Nation, which is everywhere, it's the tie that binds.
For sure.
And so to be a part of that, and you prepare like the players do, only you prepare for both teams instead of who you're playing. And you visit with the coaches. You do just about everything that the teams do. And then when the red light comes on, you don't know what's going to happen. You hope you're prepared for it. Kalani doesn't quite know what's going to happen. He hopes his guys are prepared for it and vice versa. And then they play the game.
So true.
And if it's a thriller to the end, everyone wins. And if BYU's up by 30, the BYU side wins.
Right.
I've always enjoyed that because of that process.
It's cool.
Basketball's so fast. They tip it off and then the game's over.
Yeah.
Although some games are coming that are going to be awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy.
In the Big 12.
But crazy.
Baseball is the most challenging because there's so much downtime. It takes more time to prep for baseball than football. Not because there's, for football, you got 200 guys, to get their names right. And they're not all going to play, but what if they do?
Yeah.
You got to be, their parents are watching, get their name right. Yeah. And that's a challenge. But baseball is, hey, this year they put the clock in to speed things up. But and a bat can take 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And it takes you 10 seconds to tell everyone where he's from, what his major is.
That's right.
And then if you didn't do your homework, you've got nothing.
See, that's why I think Vin Scully is the greatest of all time.
Great storyteller.
I mean, great storyteller. Kept it lively and interesting the entire game because you're right, baseball is a little bit tougher.
I think he's in the elite baseball voices. I like John Miller when he was on ESPN. I thought he took you through a good game. I know he's voiced the Giants, so I don't mean to bring that up. But John Miller, when he was on ESPN, I thought was really good and drew me in as a guy who didn't know him.
Yeah.
And there's some voices that do that, and there's some that don't. But the few that do stand out, and they last forever. And as a Cub fan, it doesn't matter. As a broadcaster, Vin Scully is the best of the best. He's right up there with impact guys. Howard Cosell had his stick, which made him so unique, which made him stick out. Vin Scully was a storyteller, and in a baseball game that's 3 hours and 25 minutes, you need to tell stories, you have dead air. And especially when he was on the radio.
Yep. I want to know your favorite game that you ever called.
I think it might be the Texas game because of the 2-hour delay.
Yeah.
And we had, Blaine and I were up eating ice cream, and the guys down there, Emma Harrington and the guys doing the pregame show, they got blown off their set. So then they threw it up to us, and we had Jimmer come in, and the field guys. We had Kevin Eubank on from the weather because it was that stormy night.
Yeah.
And then what Taysom did, and the celebration in the crowd. That game was on ESPN, and then we were doing a side-by-side for BYU TV.
Right.
But I think that was the night where, it was a long, long day, but it was so good.
So good. Taysom Hill's performance against Texas is, they call him the Texas Nightmare.
Yeah.
Like he did that good. And Texas fans will never forget Taysom.
No.
He murdered them.
What he did the next year
was just as good.
He's got 3 touchdowns, but the one that was called back.
I know.
On a phantom holding call, I think it was. That one that was called back,
incredible.
Would have broken the game open earlier. And he was off to the races, and we
frustrating.
were there on the sideline as he took off and ran. I think
up
it was
the
65
left-hand side,
yards.
right into the end zone, wasn't it?
The one he went, the long one was to the right. I think they were attacking the north end zone because Blaine and I were just opposite of him. The one that he leaped over the guy was right in front of us, so that was to the left. But that one that he ran for 65 yards, we're listening to the crowd going, "It's happening again." And this was early in the game.
Oh yeah,
it was like we can't stop him. And they couldn't stop him.
They couldn't.
But had they not called that holding thing, he would have been off to the races.
Didn't the Texas defensive coordinator get fired after the game?
After the Provo game. And then the head coach was out after the end of that season. So there was a new coach when BYU went to Austin and did the same thing to him.
Taysom, you naughty.
Now they got a new coach now.
Yeah.
When we go to Austin in October with our friend Steve Sarkisian.
Oh, my goodness. That's crazy. Your favorite BYU football team of all time? See, for me, mine's the 96 Cougars. Sarkisian with Sark.
I was going to say 96.
For you? It's my favorite team.
I loved 2001 when they were 12-0.
That was
before Staley broke his ankle.
Before they played Hawaii. Was it in Hawaii when they got
beat over there?
They were like 12-0.
Doman had a separated shoulder, 12-0. But during that week, they go to Mississippi State. They beat Mississippi State. Mississippi State was the 9/11 game that was canceled.
Yeah.
They push it to December. They go back there. They beat an SEC team on the road. And they're coming home, and the BCS releases them from consideration to their elite games. And that was disappointing for BYU. They'd lost Staley. They're 12-0. They're ranked 7, 6, I don't know what. And then by the way, you guys aren't good enough. Yeah. And then they go to Hawaii, and Hawaii was just
ready to rip them in half.
Chops.
Anyone going to Hawaii playing, it's a disadvantage for the away team in Hawaii.
And especially if they have a quarterback, and they had one that year. I'm gonna go with 96.
Yeah, same. Who is your favorite player in all sports at BYU that you have ever been able to watch? The greatest ever.
Danny Ainge.
He was on another level.
I was a ball boy in '79, so when I was 12, and I would rebound for him before games. And I'm just this punk kid from Lake Ridge Junior High, and he would come out and he would visit with me about my day. And I'm sitting there going, "This is the biggest star of my life." He's a big man on campus. And he was interested in me, and it made me feel good. And he and I have talked about this for a long time. I said, "Dan, you have no idea." And I know he does have an idea, but the influence a sports figure can have on a kid by giving him the time of day is immense. And during the Cougar Classic that year, they played LaSalle, and they had a Michael Brooks. Remember Michael Brooks?
Of course.
Yeah, he had like 60-some points. After the game, I asked him for his wristband. I never asked anybody for anything, but he was coming off, and I was like, and he gave it to me, and it went from my wrist all the way to my elbow. I was just a little dude, and he was a big dude. And I'm walking out, there's sweats on it and all that. So I'm walking out there just going, I got Michael Brooks' wristband.
So cool.
And my parents are like, take that thing off. We got to wash it. It's got his sweat all over and all that stuff. And you're just like, but Ainge was the MVP. He had 30-something. Danny Ainge, there was a lot. Ty Detmer's a close second.
It was so fun. 1990.
And Ty, with what he went through off the field, while he was on the field performing, with joining the church and the challenges that came from his family in Texas, and he just persevered through all of it. And he's remained first. Both those guys remained first class.
They're so good. Danny's a close friend, and all the Ainges. Danny is just as good a human being that he is an athlete and general manager. Oh, yeah. He's a good friend, and I have so much respect for him. And truthfully, Danny Ainge could be the most underrated athlete out there. Right. I really believe that. In fact, there's a YouTube video out there that talks about why he could really be considered one of the greatest athletes of all time.
Has there ever been an All-American in 3 sports in high school?
I don't know.
High school.
I actually don't know if there has been.
You know, in Oregon came after him hard. They wanted him to be a receiver, but he didn't want to play football.
Yeah, he's kind of a
baseball was his love, but basketball is where he was
the best.
Star.
He shined. Anyway, he's a great.
Who gets to go play pro ball during your summer break while you're a student at BYU playing basketball?
Yeah.
And so one of BYU's greatest athletes who played professional baseball never once suited up for the BYU baseball team. That's nuts.
That's crazy. Yeah, he's a stud. And he's got a great family. His boys are great friends, and they're just great people. So, Danny, you did well. I don't want to tell you that to make your head bigger than it already is, but we love you.
He's good.
He's a good dude.
Yeah.
Okay, what is your least favorite sport to call games on?
Soccer.
Really?
Only because I don't understand it. I've called a few soccer games at BYU as an emergency guy, like, hey, somebody's sick or whatever. And you're in there, and you want to do a good job, but I just don't understand the forwards and the defenders. And I've gotten a little bit better, but that was hard because the viewer deserves more.
Yeah,
than a guy just going, hey, what's?
So I have to say that I have to share this. So you're kind of the Ted Lasso of soccer reporting. I don't know if you've watched Ted Lasso.
I've seen some clips.
I just started it. It is fantastic. There needs to be more shows out there like that.
The actor is great.
He's great.
Yeah.
And the premise is he's hired to coach a team, and he's never coached a game of soccer in his life. And it's meant to destroy the organization. Anyway, it's just funny you said that because you're going into, call the games with soccer and don't understand the game. But anyway, great show. It's really uplifting. A lot of F-bombs, but definitely a good show. All right, let's keep going with this. How are the Cougars going to be on the gridiron in 2023? I want you to call. I'm going to tell you what I think the record's going to be, and I want to hear you say it too. And I don't know if you remember what I told you on Wise Guys, because I definitely saved the clip because I'm planning on it. I said that the Cougars would do something before, I think I said 2032. Anyway, we'll leave it at that. You probably forgot already, but I have that clip. And it is primed and ready to be shared the day that it happens. Anyway,
fantastic.
Let's talk about 2023. How are they going to do on the gridiron?
I think 7-5 would be fantastic. 6-6 and bowl eligible is realistic. A lot of the picks, from the magazines that are out now, some have them, over-unders 4.5, maybe 5 games, 5.5. How do you win a half a game? That's just how Vegas works. But if they are healthy, they can contend in the middle to upper if they're healthy, meaning in November. And we haven't been healthy in November.
Yeah, it's been a struggle.
Like ever, especially since we're playing so many of these top games early. Well, we're not playing those top games early this year. We've got Sam Houston and Southern Utah and then 10 straight P5s. But it's not Arkansas, Baylor, Sam Houston. It's we have an opportunity. One, we have to play good to win those first 2 games, but to work some bugs out.
Yeah.
Without getting hit by a freight train. The depth they've added this offseason's been impressive. That's been their number one need.
They've done a good
job. I don't need 1 tight end. I need 3 tight ends. Right? I don't need 2 offensive tackles. I need 3 offensive tackles. Linebackers, and they just picked up another one last weekend.
Right.
So I think they've addressed their needs to put them in a position to be right in the middle competing. And then next year, even though Slovis will be gone, and we have high hopes for Keaton, but next year Texas and Oklahoma are gone. Why not next year then start to contend? The 2 big fish are out, and BYU has every opportunity to be the new big fish or one of them, and maybe sooner than folks think. But this year I would take 7-5 would be phenomenal. Put us in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, which would pay more money than any bowl BYU's ever been in school history. The Pop-Tarts Bowl. It used to be the Cheez-It, which we made fun of, but now it's Pop-Tarts. It's like it sounds better
worse.
For some reason.
I think it sounds worse, actually.
but I think that would be great. What do you think?
I actually think they may surprise. And I'm not, I've actually, unfortunately, been less optimistic going into the football seasons for the past few years.
Yeah.
But I think they might surprise some people this year. I think they got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. They're stepping into a conference that's big time with the 2 big dogs in Oklahoma and Texas. But I actually think we can have an 8-4 season, and I actually think Slovis is going to do better than a lot of people think.
Yeah.
I really, really think we have a shot at being semi-decent. But I agree with you. I think the following year should be really interesting. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think recruiting is going to get easier. I think they're going to start getting a lot more looks by athletes all over the place.
And the reason they're getting looks by athletes now, and why I think that'll continue, is there's a portal to the NFL that matters to every athlete that wants to play football. And Kalani's got that portal open. There's the transfer portal that's got college football all over the place, and the NILs and all that stuff. And the NIL money, you know what? BYU can compete in NIL. They're not going to get in a bidding war with Alabama for a kid, but they can be competitive in the NIL. But what a kid wants is what Zach Wilson did. It's what Jaron Hall did. It's what Dax Milne did. It's what Puka Nacua did. It's what Brady Christensen did. It's what Blake Freeland did. It's what Fred Warner, Kyle Van Noy, all those guys did. They got into the show.
Yeah.
And
done well.
I think a player goes, you know what's more important to me? The NFL portal. I will take less NIL because it's not about how much NIL money I can get in college. It's about how can I get to the NFL.
It's preparing me to get into the draft and in the NFL.
Yeah. And Eddie Heckard comes down from Weber State, an All-American. Why does he come to BYU? He wants to get better. Michael Davis is making $35 million this year for the Chargers. All right? That's how you can do it. You can come here and you can get in the portal, the real portal that matters. And that's how I think BYU can remain competitive in the recruiting game. As long as you can go, hey, what did Keaton Slovis, first words out of his mouth? I'm here because of Jaron Hall and Zach Wilson. And I want to do what Aaron Roderick teaches in his offense because I think it can get me to the NFL, period.
Well, it can.
Jake Retzlaff, #1 junior college quarterback in the country. He was on Sports Nation the other day, and we asked him about that. He goes, it's not about the legends. I get that. He goes, it's about what our guys are doing now. And I see Zach Wilson, Jaron Hall, and Keaton Slovis. He goes, they're going where I want to go. And so he picks BYU. He's the first Jewish quarterback in the history of BYU football.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And
I didn't realize that.
And so it's like he didn't pick BYU because of commonality.
Yeah.
He picked it because it could put him in the show. And then he gets here and realizes, hey, we all got a lot of things in common. This is going to be great. I love my teammates.
Yeah.
So that's the portal that matters. And that portal hasn't always been open at BYU, but it is now.
So true. So true. Well, I have a bunch of crazy other questions, but I think we're slowly.
It's like a 10-hour podcast.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No. This is awesome. You kidding me, man? I love this stuff. So, but we had a little game that we were going to play. So, both of us have been fortunate to run into pretty amazing people.
We've had jobs that have done that.
Yeah, we've had really, really cool opportunities. So Dave's idea was let's play the one-up game, or not necessarily the one-up, but let's really, really talk about some amazing people that we've had a chance to meet at one point or get to know, or
a name-dropping
contest. A name-dropping competition, almost like the Kevin Bacon of networking, I guess. You know the Kevin Bacon. There's the what do they call it? What do they call it? It's like
seven
layers.
7 layers that we're all related to him in some
way. In fact, I'm working on a campaign right now where Kevin Bacon's going to be involved.
How about that Footloose show? I think about it every time I see that Lehigh Roller Mill sign.
Yeah,
coming down I-15.
That's just right up the street.
Yeah, where you just
Footloose, right up there.
I've never even been in that place.
Yeah,
but I know it.
It's iconic.
When I was in high school watching Footloose.
It is iconic. So okay, so how do we start this?
Okay, so you start. You're the host.
Okay.
You start with a name, and I've got to try to match it. And we've got our judge.
Okay, Magic Johnson.
Over here.
2017. It was a 2018 World Series. I had a chance to watch a portion of the game with him, and I also had Steve Garvey in the room and Steve Sachs.
Now, those are legends, and more legendary because you love the Lakers and the Dodgers.
Yes, that's just the first one that came to my mind.
Okay. Mickey Mantle.
You met Mickey Mantle.
Just before he passed away, he was doing a trade card show in Las Vegas at the Riviera. Somebody called me up and said, hey, Mickey Mantle's over here. I'm like, what? I grabbed a cameraman, walk over to the Riviera. It was right across from our station. And I go in, and the guy at the door goes, yeah, Mickey doesn't do interviews. I'm like, no, we just kind of, can we ask him? They're like, yeah, you can ask him. And so he's signing, and we walk up, sit down next to him, and he looks over, and I introduce myself, Dave McCann, Channel 8. Just want to know if we could talk to you for a little bit while you're signing. And he goes, sure. And he puts his pen down. He turns around just like this. and now it's me and Mickey Mantle. Now, I hadn't even thought of what I was going to ask him. I didn't think I was going to get that far. So here's what I asked him. I was coaching my son's 10-year-old Little League team, and so we had a bunch of 10-year-olds. And not terrible. I knew of his history, but I didn't know a lot about his health problems. I just knew that he had a lot of them. And I said, hey, I'm coaching a bunch of 10-year-old kids in our Little League team. What advice do you have for me to tell them? Now, I'm thinking he's going to say, bunt, bat, run, field, whatever, some baseball stuff. And he paused, and his eyes started to tear up. And he said, tell them to not be like me. And he paused. And I just paused with him because I was like, and then he continued. He goes, I destroyed my career. I destroyed my body with drugs and alcohol. And tell them to stay away from that stuff. Wow. And to not be like me. I expected just hey, be like Mike, be like me. This is one of the greatest New York Yankees, let alone baseball players in the history of the game. And I was so taken back by that. I don't even know what I asked him after that, a couple of questions. But that's the soundbite we put on the evening news that night. And I'll never forget it because it was so opposite of what I thought. And then he passed away a short time later of liver disease. Literally, alcohol had killed him. Wow. And I was just stunned by that. And my father-in-law was such a Mickey Mantle fan, and I was excited to call and say, "You're not going to believe who I interviewed today." But I'll never forget the look in his eyes, his big bushy eyebrows, and to tell the kids that he had squandered his whole life.
Jeez, that's
what
awesome.
A lesson.
What a lesson. What a lesson.
Does Mantle trump his entourage of Lakers?
Yes, I'm going to answer that. The
Dodgers?
answer is yes. Mickey Mantle is one of my heroes. I just read an article yesterday that they found a perfect 10 rookie card of his.
Really?
Sold for $24 million. Wow.
$24
million. And the guy pulls it out and it's in this huge suede case. It's awesome. I'm a huge card collector, kind of a nerd there.
It looks like you got
gosh, okay.
Okay, so 1-0. Okay.
1-0. Okay, your turn. Now you got to start. Because I'm going to try because there's definitely a benefit to starting.
Yeah, I know, because that gives you some time.
So, yeah.
All right, I'm in the green room at Good Morning America.
Okay.
I'm on the show the same day as President Carter.
Okay.
And President Carter comes in, sits down next to me,
wow.
And we sit and visit, and we had a great conversation. And I said, let me tell you something. There's a mystery in our family that our mother may have voted for you in 1976, much to my father's chagrin, who voted for the Republican. And he thought that was so cool. He said, tell your mom, thank you for her support. I said, now, my dad since passed away, and so now he knows. And my mom knows that at some point when she crosses over, they're going to have that conversation of whether or not she voted for a Democrat in our family. And President Carter thought that was so cool, and he talked to me on our way out. And I sat there and I thought, who gets to sit next to a president of the United States? So I'm going to go with President Carter. Over to you.
That's a pretty good one, man. Yeah, I'm in it. Well, I mean, I don't know if this isn't part of my professional career.
It doesn't matter.
Okay. Well, I met Michael Jackson at Disneyland on accident when he was passing through going to that. There's a super nice dinner place inside of Disneyland.
Really, I've never found a super nice one down there.
Well, I know it's like any Disney diehard is gonna know what I'm talking about. Some restaurant, I can't remember, and it's like an exclusive place. And I had to use the restroom, and I went into the restroom, and out was walked Michael Jackson, and I'm like, and this is back in the heyday,
So now, did you just walk past him, or did you stop?
No, I stopped him. I said, Michael Jackson. I was like, I mean, you see Michael Jackson. And plus I was like 10, 11 years old. I mean, it's like right when Captain EO came out, which still, I mean, do you remember watching Captain EO at Disneyland when you were a kid or younger?
I don't remember that one, but we're familiar with all that stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, I shook his hand and he said, it's nice to meet you. And I don't know why that just came to my mind. And, hopefully, I don't know if that probably does beat President Carter. Michael Jackson or President Carter.
All right.
Okay, so it's 1-1.
Okay, you're
I didn't even think I was going to pull that card out, but okay. Yeah. So my turn now.
Yeah.
Jeez, dude. I met Tom Petty, which I thought was awesome. I met him He was at dinner with some other music executives. It was at some sushi joint in Southern California. It was about a year or two before he passed on.
Great Tom Petty.
Yeah, and he was as nice as it gets. He spent 5 minutes. I started asking him, his favorite, his favorite music and where was he inspired, who inspired him, and so on. And he sat and talked to me for 5 minutes. So I thought that was pretty good. Cool. Yeah.
All right, I was going to immediately counter with Keith Urban or Garth Brooks, but I'm not. I'm going to go with Charlton Heston.
Wow. Okay, that's awesome.
I met Charlton Heston at the Sierra Theater in Orem.
What?
They did the 10 Commandments, recolorized it and all that stuff, and they were going to premiere it at the Sierra. I was a reporter at KBYU from my class, 316, and I went up to the Sierra because I knew he was coming, and I interviewed him and visited with him about that movie. And what I remember from him saying, because he was Moses, right? And I remember asking him about Mount Sinai and playing a character like Moses, and he said, "You can never go over there and be the same person." It had a profound impact.
That's awesome.
On his life, and he'd since been over there, and he was so nice and genuine to just this punk college kid.
So cool. He's a legend.
And so, all right. So I'm going Charlton Heston.
That's a good one.
Oh, does that beat Tom Petty? Even though I love Tom Petty. All right, 2-1.
Okay. Well, your turn to start. One more time. Let's do it one more time.
One last one. Bill Murray.
Oh gosh, that's so good. I'm a huge Bill Murray fan.
Bill Murray was on Good Morning America the day I was on, and we sat in the green room, and he had part ownership of the Trappers. And so he'd been to Salt Lake, loved Utah, right. and so we're bonding over this, and then he went out. I did my story, and I was still out in the studio, and then he went out, and he was doing an interview, and Christian, I think Stewart maybe was the weather guy. Anyway, Murray got up and went over and just started doing the weather. Took over. He commandeered the whole show. And then years later,
so good.
I walked with him as he was playing in the Las Vegas Invitational Pro-Am in Vegas. And I walked a few holes with him, put a microphone on him, and he had remembered we'd had a meeting way back when, and now we were doing this, and just interacted with him and watched him interact with people.
He's great.
And yeah.
I'm a huge Bill Murray fan.
So I'm going Bill Murray.
Man,
what do you got?
So you're getting into like the best actors of all time, legendary actors.
We're just getting into people that we've had.
You're kicking my butt right now, man.
Just 2-1. Just go. You got a giant reservoir of who's who.
Well, I'm only going to do this because I know that our voter, or the judge here, might know who he is. But met Derek Jeter and spent. Actually, this is crazy. My wife and I ran into him. We were the last people. I believe it was we were at the Kansas City All-Star game, Major League Baseball game. And we were the last people to leave. I believe it was Ruth's Chris. And we just found out we did not find out. We were just pregnant. Mikkel was pregnant, And as we're walking out, Derek Jeter was walking out. And I guess he was in a back room, or whatever. And we stopped him to say hi. And he literally stood and talked to us for 10, 15 minutes. Yeah. He was so interested in us and was the kindest, nicest dude ever. I'm like, honey, we should name our baby Jeter. It ended up being Tommy, but he was the nicest dude. And he didn't have to stand there and talk to us for all that time. But I'm a huge Derek Jeter fan.
That's a pretty good one. That's the captain right there.
He is a legend.
I have a Ruth's Chris story too. We were in there in Vegas. It was off Flamingo. It's not there anymore now, but it was late night and we were in there eating and I just noticed the table over. I just look up and I'm just like, that's Pete Rose. And I said to my wife, hey, that's Pete Rose. She was like, who's Pete Rose? I'm like, never mind then. I don't have time. But I'm just like, what a random thing that is. Just to look over there and go,
stud.
There's Pete Rose.
I'm a big Pete Rose fan.
Jeter's big. Jeter's one among the biggest.
So Jeter or Bill Murray? Suck. Okay, I got one more then. I'm going to do one more last one.
The rest of the day, we're going to be thinking of guys going,
yeah, I know. I'm trying to remember. So I met Will Ferrell. So my brother Trey, never tell him this, he and Will Ferrell are pretty much twins.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Trey's the better looking. We call it to make him feel better. He's the better looking version of Will Ferrell, much more, ripped but Will Ferrell is one of my favorite comedians. So I went up to him. It was at a Dodger game, Dugout Club. I walked up to him and I said, "Hey, Will, I have something to show you." And he goes, "Okay." So I pull out a picture of my brother and I said, "I know your twin. He's actually my brother." And he looks at the picture and he goes, "He looks nothing like me." And I said, "Yes, he does." So I find another picture and he's like, "Nope. He doesn't look anything like me. Not even close." And I'm like, "All right, dude." He was kind of a dick.
Really?
Yeah, he's kind of, I don't know if he was offended because he knew he looked nothing like my brother, but really he does, because Trey gets told every day that he looks like Will Ferrell. So anyway, I met Will Ferrell and I wasn't impressed. I hate to say it. Maybe he was having a bad day. I don't know.
Well, I'm going to go with...
He's going to get me again. Here we go. I'm going to think about all these people that I should have.
I was going to go with Agassi, but I'm not going to go with
Andre?
Agassi. Yeah.
He's such a stud.
He's in Las Vegas, so I've interviewed him.
We need to be done.
I was going to go with
I think
Agassi.
you might go with Will Ferrell over Andre Agassi.
That's why I'm not going with Agassi. I'm just throwing that out there.
Okay, so he's being strategic about this.
I'm going to go with Mike Tyson.
Oh, gosh.
Who I had a chance to interview a number of times, and I'll tell you the one time that I remember the most. He's coming off the dais before a fight. It's a fight press conference. He hates them.
Right.
He's up there like, I don't know what else he's got to do the rest of the day, but sitting there, it looks like he's got a million things he's got to do. So we're ready to, I'm going to interview him for the evening news that night, and he's coming down the steps, and the guy says, you got 1 minute, 3 questions. Now with Mike Tyson, the challenge is, how am I going to get some sentences put together here for a soundbite? Because it's just, I'm ready to fight, I just want to fight. Those aren't, I'm like, so in my head, I'm thinking, I got to get him to answer some why questions. Explain why you feel that way. So anyway, he comes down, and we're about the same size. I might actually be a little taller than him, which is crazy because in his prime, he's the most feared man on the planet.
Right.
But those camera angles also make Arnold Schwarzenegger look like the most feared man on the planet.
Right.
And Sylvester Stallone. And Tom Cruise isn't a giant either.
No.
But camera angles are everything. So he comes down and he's chewing his gum and he's staring at me and he's agitated, right? And so I remember feeling fear I'm the interviewer and I'm feeling fear because I'm thinking he could just punch me at any moment.
Take your life.
Because he's off his medication because it's a fight. So this is all.
Yeah.
And he sits there and he's just going like this, just looking at me, like daring me to ask him a question. I'm just like, oh my gosh. And so then I asked him 3. We got what we needed, and then he left. And I'm sitting there going, I remember my heart just, I'm like, why did I let that guy make me feel this way? I'm interviewing him. He should be nervous about what I'm about to ask him.
Right.
But that was the same guy that bit off part of Evander Holyfield's ear. I was going to throw Holyfield into that mix too. Or
Holyfield, I've spent a lot of time with Evander.
Yeah, Evander's awesome.
I've been back to his
Boys and Girls Club in Atlanta.
Should have said Evander Holyfield. Yeah.
Or George Foreman. But, I covered boxing in Vegas. So all the Oscar
De La Hoya, those
guys.
Yeah.
So anyway, Mike Tyson over Will Ferrell.
This is getting
like 4-2.
That's okay. The one thing I haven't shared with Mike Tyson, I got to give Mike Tyson. Oops, I hit it. It broke last time when I knocked it or hit it. Mike Tyson played a role in the hardest I've ever laughed in my life. One of the hardest times.
What, Hangover?
Yes.
Yeah. Which
in the air tonight? In the air tonight when they're singing, and he goes, boom, hits Zach Galifianakis right in the face and it knocks him out.
Yeah.
I couldn't breathe. I was laughing so hard. I was laughing so hard I could not breathe when he knocked him out. Anyway, so good job, Mike. Great acting skills.
Here's my favorite Mike Tyson. He's fighting Frank Bruno. Bruno's this big British fighter.
Right.
British people love boxing. I didn't realize that. 6,000 of them came over to the MGM for this fight. I called my dad, who was a bishop up here, and I said, Dad, you got to come see a Tyson fight. I go, if you'll fly down, I'll get us seats, and you can watch this spectacle. And so he goes, all right. I said, but there's one thing you got to promise me you'll do. We'll fly you back early Sunday morning. When you go back to your ward council, where the whole ward is around Relief Society president, Elders Quorum president, the Sunday school, the ward council in a bishopric meeting, you got to ask everyone around the room what they did last night. And then when it comes back to you, you have to tell them you're at the Tyson fight in Vegas. He goes, just totally out of his character. He goes, all right. And so he comes down. We go down and sit down low for the undercard, and Jack Nicholson walks down our row, and awesome. all the characters at the time. And then we go up and we sit a little higher. I said, normally I sit ringside for these, but since I have a guest, I'm going to sit a little higher. So we're up there, and the fighters are in their locker rooms. The lights go down. It's time for the anthems. And they play God Save the Queen for Frank Bruno, and all the Brits sing it like they do at other soccer games.
Right.
And then they sing the national anthem, and they boo it just tremendously. I'd never heard the national anthem booed, let alone in America. And I was just sitting there going, and I remember talking to my dad going, this really isn't a great song for them. This is why they're still mad, apparently.
Right.
Anyway, their fighter comes out, there's a roar, whatever. Well, here comes Tyson. And he comes out, and all the American fight fans start screaming for him, and he doesn't know why. So he comes out to this thunderous roar. Usually he comes out to, his gangster rap music and whatever. Yeah. Anyway, it comes out to the thunderous roar that he talked about after the fight. He had no idea. It's like, what did he do? So he gets in the ring, and in the third round, he knocks Frank Bruno out of the ring. Fight's over. So everyone leaves. We just hung around, and here are these 6,000. They didn't even move. They flew all the way over from England. They thought this was their moment, and their guy just got plastered.
I love it.
And
Mike Tyson's
and then we went to the post-fight press conference so my dad could meet Don King and some of that stuff. And then the next morning, he went back and did his thing. And I said, your street cred is going to shoot way up with the young men.
Too good. Well, Dave, dude, it's been so much fun having you on.
Sorry, I've talked for too long.
No, this has been great. We got some awesome gems in this, and I'm gonna have a rematch with you eventually over this whole
What, are you gonna go meet a bunch of new people?
Well, I just am starting to remember all these people. You put me on the spot.
You know what? You might not be able to win that. But what about just not because I'm great. I just been to some places. But throwing the football, I've seen you throw the football.
Oh yeah, actually.
What if we?
Yeah.
I want you to know I'm not a professional like you like to throw.
Yeah, I'm happy you know how to throw a football. Because,
I know Jaron Hall.
You saw Jaron. You saw us knocking down. Let's go, dude. Let's go.
Let's do that.
Let's do that. Okay, so before we do that, I always end my podcasts with a cereal. What's your favorite cereal of all time?
Well, I've got a rotation of Frosted Flakes, Fruit Loops, and Captain Crunch. That's usually one of my tough choices of the morning is which way I'm going to go. But I grew up on these cereals, and I like Pops. Pops is the cereal of my youth.
Let me grab this real quick.
You know what's the great thing about Pops is they've never changed.
They stay true to who they are. And that's important in life, ladies and gentlemen. Stay true to you. So good job, Pops. Anyway, let's go throw this football. Brother, thanks for being on. And I'm about to dominate you.
Let me just tell you something. I enjoy knowing you.
Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you.
You bet.
All right. Until next time, sayonara.